Alright, ladies and gents, boys and girls, please take a seat. If you have a seat, get another seat, because we are about to delve into the wonderful world of mitochondria in the book Out of the Silent Planet by C.S. Lewis. Out of the Silent Planet is a science fiction novel written by C.S. Lewis, but most wouldn't even recognize Mr. Lewis as an author if it weren't for his other series. Out of the Silent Planet was and is one of Lewis's lesser-known works, and is actually the first part of a trilogy of books following the intergalactic escapades of the fabulous Dr. Ransom, not to mention being an album by Iron Maiden. Anyway, let's cut the music and just actually start talking about the book.
Everybody get up, it's time to slam now. We got the real jam going down.
No, go past this part. In fact, never play this again.
As you could probably guess, this book takes place in space, or to be more specific, the planet of mitochondria, otherwise known as Mars. However, the hero of our story, Dr. Ransom, does not actually go to the planet on purpose. He's actually a prisoner of science. His captors? Mysterious philanthropist Dr. Weston, and a former colleague known as Divine. The two scientists have apparently come into contact with an alien species, who demands a tribute from Earth. Dr. Ransom, being basically a drifter, is found to be a prime specimen.
Look, a drifter, let's kill him! Son of a... Come back!
So after they poison him, they load him into their spaceship, which is actually kind of football-shaped. It's kind of hard to tell from the description of the book, since the main character stays inside most of the time, due to the, absence of air. From what I could tell, the ship had a circular design. Actually, let's say spherical, with its own center of gravity, almost like a tiny planet. Anyway, on this tiny planetoid ship, Ransom quickly develops Stockholm Syndrome. He begins to aid them in their mission and actually starts asking about space and other planets. Except all of his questions are blown off with excuses such as conserving air. This eventually leads Ransom to become suspicious, and eventually discover their plot to offer him as a human sacrifice. Eventually they land on the planet to meet a pinkish-red landscape, with purple trees that kind of resemble Twizzlers. They aren't able to enjoy the view for very long, however, as soon as they begin to unload their spaceship, the Sorns arrive. The Sorns were mentioned earlier in whispers between Divine and Weston as the dominant species on the planet. They're 9 feet tall, ghostly pale, and look almost exactly like Squidward. When he overheard Divine and Weston's earlier scheming, Ransom depicted the Sorns as monstrous, bizarre alien creatures, but he finds that the Sorns aren't nearly as terrifying as he had previously imagined. Nevertheless, when the Sorns arrive, Ransom makes a break for the forest. On mitochondria, 3 intelligent forms of life have developed a symbiotic relationship with each other. There's the Sorn, the hyper-intelligent scientist, the Pfifferschugi, the skilled metallurgist, and lastly, there's the man-seal Hross, plural Hrossa. The Hross are the poets, musicians, and hunters of the planet. Ransom actually stumbles into one of these creatures after spending the night in the forest, and he studies its behavior closely. To his surprise, the creature actually has a more human level of intelligence than he had previously thought possible. Ransom and the Hross then engage in an extremely awkward conversation of hand signals, each trying to learn the other's language. Ransom learns more about mitochondria than the Hross does about English. The conversation ends up turning in Ransom's favor as he ends up in the Hross encampment via boat. It turns out Ransom has pretty good alien people skills. As he spends time among the Hross, Ransom learns about their culture and their relationship with all the other species on the planet. Rather than being the intellectual overlords that Ransom had previously imagined, the Sorns are actually more like scientific partners of the Hrossa, designing their hunting equipment and air tanks. These designs are then constructed by the Builder people. All 3 species worship Oyarsa, a spiritual entity that serves as judge, jury, executioner, and Jesus. Kind of like that other guy. Oyarsa removes creatures from the world who have reached the end of their lives, or have committed evil acts. There's never been the need to do so, though, because all of the creatures get along so well that virtually no evil is committed. When Ransom asks why all the creatures get along so well, the Hrossa just kind of don't really understand what he's talking about. They debate and debate and debate and debate and debate, but they really can't reach an agreement why everybody just gets along so well in Mitochondria. Because of this, the Rasa don't really understand humans and why they're so driven by greed. But as the Rasa discover, not all humans are that bad. And as the weeks and even months go by, Ransom actually becomes a trusted friend of the Rasa. He becomes mostly fluent in the Mitochondrian language, and he even gets invited to go on a hunt. But this hunt isn't fun and games. This is a hunt for a deadly sea serpent called a Hanakra, and Ransom has to help them kill it with nothing but spears. They load up the boats and head out to the river and get ambushed. The creature surfaces before the Rasa can react, and they have to give chase in order to throw their spears at it. In the middle of the chase, Ransom gets thrown from the boat, and he has to defend himself with spears that are floating on the water. Ransom spots a haze of black floating through the water, and within seconds the creature surfaces and jumps straight at him. Kaboom! Dead! Ransom slays the Hanakra, and all the Ross celebrate. But it's not to last. A rifle shot comes from the woods, and a Ross falls over dead. After months of searching, Weston and Vine have finally found Ransom. The Ross realize that Ransom is in danger, and they say that the only safe place for him is Meldalorn, the stronghold home of Oyarsa. Meldalorn lies in the far-off distance, and the only way to get to it is a path cut far up into the mountains. Ransom must walk this path alone. Halfway up the path, Ransom looks back down, and he sees how far he's come. Then he turns back, and he sees how far he has to go. The air is thinner, the stars are more intense, and Ransom feels as though he has to climb into space to complete his journey. Upon reaching the top of the mountain path, a Soren comes out of a nearby cave and saves him from near suffocation by supplying him with air. This Soren, named Augre, takes Ransom to the other Sorens, who begin to methodically question Ransom about the Earth. During this process, Ransom learns that the Earth is called Tholkandra, or the Silent Planet. That's in the title of the book, in case you didn't know. The next day, Ransom continues his journey, but he rides on Augre's shoulders to conserve his breathing. On the trip, the two pass giant, lifeless forests, and Augre tells Ransom about how there used to be life on the surface of the planet. Bum bum bum, ba bum bum bum. When the two reach Meldalorn, Ransom is dazzled by the giant flower-like structure in the center of the lake. On the island that surrounds the flower, all of the Mitochondrian races can be found mingling together, including the Elidal. The Elidal are the ghost-like servants of Oyarsa, who have the appearance of flickering light. Ransom walks through a crowd of these beings on his trip to the spire of the center structure, for a meeting with Oyarsa himself. Oyarsa is basically a giant Elidal, with a deep, booming voice. Ransom tells Oyarsa about all of the evil that humankind has brought upon Mitochondria, and he recommends that it kills all humans on the planet, including Ransom himself. Oyarsa reveals that humans were not always bad, and that they used to have an Oyarsa of their own. This being was actually the one who became evil, and actually started to attack the beings of other worlds. It was this great war that scorched Mitochondria's surface. When the evil being was defeated, he was confined to his own world, and forbidden to contact those of other worlds, hence the Silent Planet. Oyarsa then states that he has no real authority to kill members of other worlds. This, ironically, is when Divine and Weston show up, except now they look more like Steve Buscemi and Hurley. Divine takes a seat, and Weston actually tries to intimidate the crowd, unsuccessfully. Much discussion takes place, but it's eventually decided that they need to go back home. But with minimal supplies. If they suffocate to death in space, whatever. If they starve to death, whatever. If they manage to make it back alive, whoop-de-doo. We don't care. Divine and Weston are clearly evil, but Ransom isn't. He can stay if he wants. However, Ransom actually declines their offer to stay, as he feels an obligation to go back to Earth. So, the three leave Mitochondria and begin the long voyage back home. The amount of oxygen left in the ship for the return journey is so low that they actually have to take turns controlling the ship, and in turn, sleep for the rest of the time. Chances are slim that they'll live to see Earth again. On about the 80th day of the voyage, Ransom falls asleep for what he believes will be the last time. But, when he wakes up, he finds that the situation is not nearly as dire. The ship has landed on a lakeside back on Earth, and Divine and Western are nowhere to be found. So, Ransom does what any rational human being would do. He gets a drink. So, now that I've summarized the whole book for you, you're probably wondering why you should read it. Well, I'll tell you why! Ding, 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 ding. Ding.
feel free to hit that pause button if you feel like it. Like, I don't really have anything else to add. Yeah. Yeah, we're done here.